Welcome to the second part of a series where I built a macOS app from start to end. And this is a screenshot app. In the last part, I already implemented the buttons to take screenshots. For example, I can press here, make a screenshot, and then you see it's selecting. I can select this area. This takes the screenshot, and I'm collecting this data. I can also then drag this information in other apps. For example, if I have here the freeform app, I can take this and drag it over here. In this part, I'm going to further work on this app. First, I want to add global keyboard shortcuts. For example, if I'm in any other app, like here on Xcode, I want to have a global keyboard shortcut. That is Option Command 3. This starts my screenshot. I take the screenshot, and when I open this app, for example, as a menu bar app, here I see the screenshot. And then if I'm, for example, in another app, I can then open this menu bar extra and then drop it in here. So I can collect all my screenshots. I can also start the process of taking one here, and then I can see what images I already have. I'm going to use a package that helps me to create these global keyboard shortcuts. I'm also explaining what's the difference between global and local keyboard shortcuts and why for my application I want to have these global ones. Then, thankfully to this package, I can also allow the user to customize the keyboard shortcuts. So we're going to add a settings window. When you go into your app, here's settings. This is bringing up this nice settings window with the toolbar styling and with this free button. So I can decide here, tap here, and then press something else, like here, Option Command 7, and then it sets it to this keyboard shortcut. Can then also Option Command 3. I'm also going to use this settings window to add a toggle to show and hide a menu bar extra. This is the one that we are building here, where I collect all my images, so that I have this now. This images in there. With these changes of adding this menu bar extra and this keyboard shortcuts, we're greatly amplifying the functionality and usefulness of this little screenshot app, where I just want to make screenshots and collect them on a nice way so they don't clutter up my whole desktop or any other folders, and I can easily find them again. This is the second part, and then in later parts, we're actually adding a lot more about fancy things like image editing and stylings, and a more elaborate user interface. In this tutorial, it's really much more about windows, menu bar extras, and data flow in your macOS applications. I will start by adding global keyboard shortcuts, and we're going to use a Swift package. This is the keyboard shortcuts package. So I take this, go to my main target, my projects, dependencies, and press plus to add a new dependency with this URL. This is this package, add package, finish fetching, and then add package. This package has also the possibility that you can add UI elements where the user can customize these shortcuts. So we're going to also add this in a settings view. But first, we need to define the constants of what keyboard shortcuts we want to have, and you can also add default values. So this is the part that I need. In my app, I'm adding a new group for model, and this is keyboard shortcuts plus global, because this is an extension. So I have to import keyboard shortcuts, this is the package, and then in the extension to keyboard shortcuts name, I define static let properties that declare what kind of keyboard shortcuts I want to have. So for example, I want to have the screen short capture, and I need to here declare this as self, so this is a keyboard shortcut. And I want to have the one with the default, the initializer with the default value. So the first parameter is a string value, the name of this keyboard shortcut, which is used for storing it in user defaults. So that is simply here screen capture. So if you store something, don't store it under the same key, otherwise you will overwrite this. Then you can specify what is the default keyboard shortcuts, the global keyboard shortcut. I use here the initializer with key and modifiers. For example, I can say free, and we are using Option Command 3 for this one. This is the first keyboard shortcut. I want to have two more for, this is the area one, the window and then the full screen. So I copy this. The first one is window and the last one is full. Now I also need to change the keys. And the default keyboard shortcut would be 4 and 5. Probably need to check if this is making sense. Next, I now have this keyboard shortcuts, but when the user presses, for example, 3 option command, I want to, in my app, to react to this and actually take a screenshot. Basically, I want to run the same code as I did when the user presses on this screenshot button, which is in my view model, take a screenshot for this type. So in here, this is already a view model that I can use this to also capture this keyboard input. If we go back to the documentation, you need to add in one of your view models in the initializer, you need to basically register to this keyboard shortcuts. So I'm copying here this initializer, and in my view model, I first need to import this package, and then after my property declaration, I add this initializer. I need to do this here differently because I have different keys. So for example, I have the screenshot capture, and whenever this keyboard shortcut is pressed, this closure is executed. What do I want to do when the user presses on the screen capture keyboard shortcut? I want to execute this take screenshot function, which calls the command line tool for screen capture. So I can say self.take screenshot for area. Similar, I also want to handle this situation where I use the screenshot full. In this case, I pass in the argument of full, and then the last one is window, and I pass in here the window parameter, which then, when the command line tool is executed, it passes these arguments depending on full, area, or window. This was the, for example, adding here this W for just a window. Okay, I stop my application. Now, when I use a global keyboard shortcut, I had option command 3, and you see it is taking the screenshot. Now, I could have also added a normal keyboard shortcut. Need to probably tell what's the difference. I could have also added a keyboard shortcut to my buttons. So for example, I can add here keyboard shortcut for key equivalent A and then command. This, if you do this, you can also do this, but it has a different working, because this keyboard shortcut works as long as this window here has or is active. As long as this window, which is IHH is in focus. So now this one gets all the keyboard input. Don't remember what I had, command A. Yes, you see here, this is executing this button. Typically, what you would do instead with this keyboard shortcuts, the one I just showed you to the view modifier, this we would add to our menu. For example, we could add here under File, New Window. You can also add here this action of take a screenshot. And then add the keyboard shortcut here, which is then also shown to the user and easier to find. But adding this to views inside the windows is a little bit tricky because people just don't know about them. So it's a little bit difficult. I'm going to remove this, and we are talking again when I add a command. Okay, the power of the global keyboard shortcut that I added is, even if my window, if my app is not in focus, I have something else open. I have the terminal open. This is now the key window, and I use the keyboard shortcut, the global one, option command 3. This is executed, and now my app has actually received this data, which you can see when I open this window again. So this is this screenshot here. This is especially useful, for example, we're working in Xcode and I want to make a screenshot. I can now use my own. Command 3, copy this, and then it saves all of them in my app. Now, before I move on to do some more fancy stuff with the UI, I want to also add a settings window where we can adjust the keyboard shortcut that I'm using here. This is also interesting for the people to find these keyboard shortcuts. Okay, so I want to have in my app here under app another menu item for my preference, my settings window. Going back to my app, I probably should first organize this a little bit. So I have model, then I add another group for view model, where I add the screen capture view model. And then I add another one for views. And the one that I want to talk about now is settings. So I create a subview or subgroup for settings. Now, settings window look a little bit special. For example, in Xcode settings, if I open this, I have here in the toolbar this picker style with different sections. This layout is done with a tab view. Together, when you use this with the settings, it will look like this. Let's do this. I'm only going to add 2 sections for now. So I have here in this group a new file for settings view, and I add another one for my keyboard shortcuts settings view. In order to change the setting of the keyboard shortcuts, there are some views involved. So first I need to again import this keyboard shortcuts. And from the documentation, this is used with a form. The form is very useful. It looks very nicely with settings windows on macOS. Otherwise, you really don't need them because list has all the stylings too on iOS. So let's copy this form style with the keyboard shortcut recorder. This is a special view. I paste this in here, and the keyboard shortcut that I want to allow the user to adjust is my screen capture. Need to name this here, screen shot area. Then I have 2 more, one for window and one for full window, and this is full screen. Now let's see how this looks like in the preview. Because of this form style on macOS, you see now on the left column my 3 descriptions. On the right there's a button. Actually it's a text field control view that allows me to change this. I want to just add a little bit of padding around this. We'll test this as soon as we run this. Then in the settings view, I wanted to now have this tab style. So I will start with creating a tab view, and the first view is the one that we just wrote, keyboard shortcuts settings view, with a tab item. This is the icon that will be shown in toolbar on top for this tab. So this is a label, title key and image. So this is keyboard. This looks a little bit different in the preview because it gets different stylings once you use it with SwiftUI in the settings window. So, and then for now, I'm going to add a second tab with a dummy text. Second, and the gear icon. Okay, now that I have something to put into my settings window, I am going to go in the main app file, because here you describe all the window types. Settings is a special window type. We also define the menu bar app later in here. Basically, you have to look for the add main file. Scene in SwiftUI means window types. Okay, so this is a settings scene with my settings window. Now I can build and run to see my amazing little settings window. Going in my app, and now I have here an option for settings, also with the keyboard shortcut. And if I open this, the first tab is the keyboard one with these 3 options. I actually overrode the default value for the first one. So if you tap on this field, you see this blue border around it. This is the focus of macOS. So this is now, because I have here 3 input text fields. When I press my keyboard, which of these text fields will receive this information? And this is the one that is in focus. This is for me interesting as a user. I need to know where I'm entering something. So in this case, I'm entering something for the first key field. And in order to change the shortcut, I now have to just select and press something. For example, I can reset this to Option Command 3, and you see it appears. I can go to the second one, again, this blue border for focus management. You can also use the tab and the function tab. Okay, this is a little bit weird. I guess I'm not really sure how this is programmed. Okay, anyways, so I could, for example, choose the last one and say, I don't like Option Command 5, I want Option Command 6, and then it overwrites it. And now when I am here outside, So this window is not in focus and these text fields are not in focus, maybe this one. Now, when I use this keyboard shortcut, Option Command 3, it starts again this global keyboard shortcut and I can take a screenshot. So you see how to override this. I can also test this with the new one, Option Command 6. This is now the full screen, my main screen taking. I want to have a global keyboard shortcut so that whenever, even if my app is not in focus, so maybe I close my main window, I close this, and I open Finder. Even now I can use my global keyboard shortcut, Option Command 3. This takes a screenshot and sends the same information to my app so that when I open the app, this screenshot is in my app. In contrast, there's another way of adding keyboard shortcuts, and this is with a view modifier. So I can, for example, directly to my Make a Screenshot button, add one keyboard shortcut with key and modifiers, so A and then Command. So let's try this one as a comparison. Okay, this window is in focus and Finder, so this one, my app is in focus. Now when I press Command A, this is now using this keyboard shortcut. But let's say I am having Finders in focus, and now I do Command A. And you see this, my Finder is reacting to it. This is because these keyboard shortcut modifiers are passed to the correct app. The thing is, as you see, obviously if I am here in Finder, I want to, when I press something on my keyboard, I want to have this window react to it. I know this is the one I'm working at, so I want to have this one reacting to it. Whereas when I'm now here on this one, this is in focus, I want this one to react to whenever I press on this keyboard. And you see, with this keyboard shortcut modifiers that is attached to a SwiftUI view, I do this per window, per app way of passing this keyboard interactions. Whereas if I use this global keyboard shortcut, this is handling this. I'm basically in the competition between different apps and windows. I'm bypassing everybody. I'm just like, I want to be the first one to handle this here. These kind of keyboard shortcuts with these keyboard modifiers are very useful, and you will use them a lot. For example, if in Finders, if you open Edit or File, these ones, you see here new folder or folder with selections, new smart folder, these are special commands, and most of them have a keyboard shortcuts. So when we add menu items, then we should use definitely these keyboard shortcuts just to allow the user to have a faster workflow. And it's nice to add them to menu items because then I actually know what keyboard shortcuts I can use. That's quite a big thing to understand when you work with macOS in contrast to iOS. Because I have here so many windows, I'm multitasking. Which of these apps, windows is my user interacting with? Then next I want to show you a flaw of the current implementation. If I open here File, New File, I have now two windows. So first of all, one of them has an image and the other one doesn't. Does this make sense? And the next one is if I take a screenshot, this one appears here because I use this button, but if I use a global keyboard shortcut, now it goes in here. It was actually doing it twice, expecting me to do it twice. Why is it getting so weird? So let's have a look at the app. In my main app, I have this window group. Window group means there's a word group in this. This means I can have multiple windows, as many window instances for this window type. That's why I could open here more of these windows, as many as I want to have. Also, if I close them and then open again, you see I don't have any more of my screenshots left. So going back to code, each of these windows has its own content view. If I go to the content view, and each of this content view has its separate view model here. And in this view model, I stored these images. This is why, depending on which of these windows was open, it got these images. In my case, this really doesn't make sense. I don't like to have multiple windows. It's kind of confusing. Probably not a lot of people will open more windows, but I like to make sure I only have one window. And I want to make sure that I only have one instance of this view model so that all of these images go to the same one. because I declared the state object in this content view, and each window has a separate content view, I have for each content view a separate view model. So how do I make sure I don't do this? I'm going to move this declaration instantiation of this view model to the main app file, which means that this view model is only created once when the application launches. And for each of my content views, I want to pass the same view model. So here, instead of declaring it, I am saying observable object and defining this type. And then in the preview, I pass a new instance. In my main app, I add this view model and pass it to the content view. In this case, let's just test this difference. Okay, I have one file. I take a screenshot. I have the screenshot. I open the next one, and you see it's the same image. If I take a window screenshot of this stuff, you see it's in both windows. I have all the data is everywhere the same because I use the same view model which has the same data. The other nice thing about this, you saw when I tried to use my global keyboard shortcut, it was confused because, again, I had two view models that registered both this keyboard shortcut and were both performing the screenshot tab. So now if I only one time press on my global keyboard shortcut and I open the app again with these two windows, both windows again have this once, and I only did the screenshot once. The main takeaway in this is that if you want to have multiple windows and share the same data, you need to declare the data in the main app file and then pass the same data to all the different window instances. If you want to have window instances with different data, then inside of this views here, then I should declare a state object, a new one for each window separately in here. This is a little bit weird to get a hang of because thinking in windows is probably very unusual. But I hope with this example you got a little bit of a taste of why it's a little bit weird. I want to give you a negative example so you get a feeling of what happens when you don't take care of this properly. Okay, if you don't want to have multiple windows, you can use a window. So group means group, so it's multiples. Whereas window is singular, so it's just one. And I use title ID and content. Although maybe I don't need the ID in this case. I probably should do a separate video about how the window management and programmatically opening windows. But for now, let's just do screenshots. This is the title of the window, the one that's shown on top. The ID is the identifier. This is used when you programmatically want to open a window to say the window with the ID main. And the content here is this one. Okay, now if I run the app again, I go under File, and you see I don't have an option for a new window. This is because the system understood, this should not happen. If I close this one window, my application closes. Okay, this is a little bit of window, but in my case, my app is so simple, I probably don't need to have a main window. I probably just get by with a menu bar extra. Let's add a menu bar extra. Because menu bars is something related to another window type. You can always think like, it's a window, I need to go to the main app file. And here, similar to settings, there's another menu bar extra window type. You can decide how to show this. So I can say title, system image, and content. So this is screenshots with the icon of image, this image plus badge. And I'm using here dummy text for now. When I build and run this, and I look at my toolbar, I have now this new icon with this one action. If you want to remove the main window here, so it's just a basic menu bar extra app, you can remove the windows, the main windows. This is in my case, this window. So when I build and launch, you don't see the main window. Also, I don't have anything here, but I still have this icon. And in this case, what do I show in this menu bar? So under views, I'm going to create another subgroup for menu, and I add a view, SwiftUI view for menu bar content view. Let's say I'm going to use my free buttons here. So I copy these into my content view in a list. And what I actually have to have is here this view model. So I pass this also. Okay, let's try this. Stop. Okay, I go in my app. I have now opened this. I'm using here a group. This is because menu bar extras do a special styling. So when I build and run, I don't have my main file, main window, but I have this menu bar extra with these three buttons. For example, I can say make an area screenshot, and it takes a screenshot. I don't really see anything, so this is not the most fun thing to do. So maybe in here I want to actually show the screenshots. So I add another H stack. Let's have a look how I did this in the content view with the scroll view. This whole system. And I am setting the frame to maximum height of 200. And I'm making these images a lot smaller. Okay, try again. This is probably more a sizing issue than anything else. So I open this app, I take an area screenshot, I open this again, and it doesn't show. This is because it's ignoring the layout is kind of weird. If you have only buttons, like I had before, then the default menu bar extra styling is okay. So in this case, I'm changing my menu bar extra style from menu, just a list of buttons, to window. So I can actually show a more custom layout like for my images. Okay, take a screenshot and you see it coming up here or the full one. And then because I made them draggable, I can still drag them around. Not the most nicest layout for now. So let's say I'm adding my buttons below. So these three buttons should be below in an H stack as I had before. This is in a V stack with alignment and spacing. First I do the H stack. And I add some padding around everything. And now these names are a little bit large. You can find some shorter ones. And for example, use here these icons. So I'm just changing the buttons, action and labels. Now I just use here around the H tag a label style of icon only, just to make it shorter. And probably some padding around my lazy V grid, or you can use scroll margins. Okay, let's do this again. I open my menu bar extra. I press here this one button. It shows up. I take another one. And then once I'm done, maybe I'm in another app, like in freeform. I can open my menu bar extra, it's on top. I can take this image and drag it into the freeform, and I can use it here. So we can collect with this app, we can make screenshots, different styles, we can collect them, and then with this nice menu bar extra, we can conveniently allow the user to use it wherever he wants to. I think this is a nice way of using these menu bar extras. It also works as a standalone app. As you see, it's actually already quite useful. And the way to do this menu bar extras is by defining in the main app file a menu bar extra. If you have an app with multiple things, you should also allow the user to change if he wants to actually use the menu bar extra. This is the last thing I want to show you for menu bar extras. This is the isInserted binding. So actually probably should use this in here. This is a Boolean binding, and this property I want to have in my settings window, another toggle where I say, yeah, I allow the user to say, oh, do I want to use this menu bar extra or not? If I only have a menu bar extra app, then obviously I should always show this. But because in the future I'm going to change this, let's say I want to here allow this. So first I need to store this property somewhere. And I actually want to store this when the app launches again. And we're going to store this in user defaults with the convenience property wrapper of app storage. And I need to define here the user default key where I want to store this. So this is menu bar extra is inserted. I use this as a property and the default one is true. I mean, in this case, I definitely want to show this. And then I can use this here. Okay, I have now this one property, but I also want to use this in my settings views for the second one. So let's just add another one for menu bar settings view. So in here, I want to have this toggle where I can toggle this on and off. Because of this app storage, it's quite convenient and I don't need to pass this around. I can just use the same line of code with this app storage. Go to my menu bar settings view here, and then I add a form with this one toggle of show menu bar extra, binding this to this property. So I can then use this settings in my settings view as the second tab. This is menu bar extra. I don't know what the icon for menu bar is. Menu. Maybe we just use this one. Okay, try again. I have the app under screenshots, settings, and the menu bar. I should have added the frame. Okay. Where did I add the frame? I did not add a frame here, so around the tab view I'm adding a minimum frame of 400 and a minimum height of 300. So now if I go to settings, I have this separate settings for my menu bar extra, and I see this now here. If I toggle this off, this one goes away. There's one more because sometimes it's a little bit wonky if you build and run this multiple times. But you see the main functionality here with the settings. So I have these app storage settings for this Boolean property that I connect to my main app to this menu bar extra scene type. This is the end of this tutorial part where I'm building the screenshot app. And I was talking mostly about keyboard shortcuts and window management, quite a bit about Windows, how to pass this data, where it is going, and also about menu bar extras. I think it's quite an important topic that I didn't find a lot of resources to. That's why I want to really highlight this today. In the future parts of the series, I'm going to concentrate much more about the main app, and then we actually do some image editing and adding some fancy UI elements there. If you don't want to miss it, subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to like this video if it was helpful and you want to spread it around. Until next time, happy coding!